I'm Mike Baker, and welcome to National Arts. Athol Fugard is an internationally acclaimed playwright whose works deal with the social and political upheaval of the apartheid system in South Africa. Early works like Blood Knot, My Children, My Africa, The Road to Mecca, and more address this intolerant political system, while later works like Valley Song deal with the recent changes in South Africa and how they've affected the citizenry.
Yeah. Tell me the truth now. You think back to your young days and tell me, did a woman ever smell as good as the Karoo earth after a good rain? Hey? Or feel as good? The ground is soft, wet, wetty. And look what I got for you. Hey? Pumpkin seeds, but imagine it.
You started as a stage manager. Your wife was an actress. And you fashioned what was to become a great playwright.
I mean, I didn't start out with that intention. I mean, the options that presented themselves to me as I was growing up in Port Elizabeth and knowing that I wanted to be some sort of writer were the obvious ones. I was going to write the great South African novel. I was going to be a poet on the side. And maybe I'd write, turn out a couple of short stories from time to time. Theatre was never a part of my environment in growing up. And it was only when I moved to Cape Town and I was a student at the University of Cape Town that I discovered theatre, or started seeing it, and met my wife, who was studying theatre and then became a young actress. And suddenly I discovered this other possibility, and I must admit, the moment I tried it, and my first attempts were all one actors, the moment I tried it, I was like a fish in water. I just swam. I just knew I had found the medium that totally coincided with my chemistry as a human being and as a writer. I think I love language. I think that's what it comes down, spoken language.
The despair that existed during that period of your life with apartheid, had that not been there, do you think that you would have been spurred to write the great play?
I think I must acknowledge, actually, and I do so readily, that my anger, my sense of outrage at what was happening in my country, and as I began to see it, because, you know, like a lot of South Africans, I didn't see it at first. It's amazing how you can deceive yourself and how you can actually be blind. But as I began to look and see and understand, I think that that anger and that sense of outrage became very, very powerful dynamos in terms of my career. And I think it is that kind of tension because, you know, in my heart of hearts as a writer, I also want to deal with myself. I want to talk about myself. But being in South Africa forced me to try and walk a tightrope between that personal need to get myself down on paper, and the other end of the tightrope was the country and the need to say something about the country. And I think my writing career is a balancing act on a tightrope stretched between those 2 points. So I think that without being a South African in those times, I wonder if I would have been the writer that is sitting here opposite you now.
The anger obviously was the abuse of the blacks, but also the fact that the whites were hoodwinked. That angered you too.
Oh, please, listen, nobody escaped apartheid, whether you were white, colored, or black. Apartheid had a profound, mutilating effect on your life, on the quality of your life. My life as a white South African was incredibly circumscribed. They had tried to box me into a little white world. They tried to cut me off from the huge human potential that was out there in terms of black South Africa and colored South Africa and Indian South Africa. No, nobody escaped being a victim of apartheid.
I find it interesting that the only theater that existed pre-Fugard in South Africa was a pale comparison to a British play or two.
I don't understand that either. I mean, because it was there all the time. You know what I mean? And it is actually quite interesting. In our prose literature, quite a few South Africans, starting way back with a name that deserves to be better known outside of the country than she is, in fact, at the moment, a woman by the name of Olive Schreiner, who wrote was a magnificent writer. She was already seeing and understanding and beginning to articulate an anger and an outrage at what was happening in the southern part of Africa. But our theatre, no, nothing. Nothing, no, not a semblance of the South African reality on that stage. And, you know, the notion that there could be such a thing as a South African play made people laugh with embarrassment. It was amazing the jingoism that prevailed.
Your plays and the theater became a rallying point, didn't it?
Yeah,
For both
yes.
whites and blacks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was my relationship with a black drama group in Port Elizabeth that made me realize just how potent a thing theatre could be in a situation in which people were frightened to speak. How much you could say by way of the stage, and how it could be used as a weapon in a resistance campaign.
I get the feeling that the lack of understanding of the white supremacists contributed really to the significance of your drama. The fact that they may have initially ignored it, and then when it was too late to do something about it, you'd already made these dramatic inroads.
Correct, and I think that what also helped me enormously, and this is one of the, among the many huge debts I have to America, is the recognition my work received here, particularly in America. Interestingly enough, not so much in England. Now that is not the case, but in those early years it was in America that my plays first began to receive recognition, and that gave me a reputation outside of my country, and that afforded me a degree of protection. That protected me. The government was so hell-bent on trying to cosmeticize the image of South Africa that they decided, well, let's not be too rough with him, because, you know, that might, you know, and in any case, theatre is so unimportant. This was their thinking. Theatre is so unimportant. Let him do his little thing on the stage, and, you know, I mean, we'll worry about the big boys.
And all the time, plays like Master Harold and the Boys, from Broadway to university theater to community theater and back again, were generating the kind of worldwide support you needed. You needed the pressure from the outside.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and it was finally America's emphatic stand on things like sanctions that started a process which led to Nelson Mandela walking free a few years ago.
And yet there's still a great deal to be done, and I think we see that in the current play Valley Song. You can't just erase 40 years of abuse.
Those imbalances are going to need decades to level out. And the thing, and this presents a very, very real challenge to the government, because there is, you know, politicians being what politicians are, they made a lot of promises when our first democratic elections came up. And some of them were foolish promises, promises that couldn't be delivered. And the majority of black people are now waiting for those promises to be realized. And I often say that for a lot of black South Africans, the new South Africa still looks a little like and still feels a lot like the old one. It's going to take a long time. That old house that was standing there empty and falling apart when I first saw it, Landman and Jaap built it with their own hands, just the two of them. And then when Jaap died in the great flu epidemic, the young Bucks stepped into his father's shoes and carried on husbanding that land. That is how it has been ever since. His life is rooted now as deeply in that soil as the walnut tree next to the windmill. And it's like that between you and a piece of land. You end up being a part of it.
There's still anger there, there's still despair.
And impatience now as well.
Right.
Impatience with their own government.
But there's faith.
No question about that. No question about that. We wouldn't have got this far as peacefully as we have, and it's a continuing scenario. Look, at this very point in time, there is Nelson Mandela using our South African experience to negotiate a peaceful settlement to a highly explosive situation in Zaire, on board a South African warship anchored off the mouth of the Congo River. I mean, you know, it's hard to believe.
Valley Song, in examining the post-apartheid era, you of course have the young, hopeful Veronica, but you also have two older gentlemen, a white and a black. That provides you some interesting characterization there.
Well, you know, there again, as I said a few minutes earlier, comes directly from my life. I bought that piece of land that is the sort of substance of one of the stories in Valley Song. There was an old colored man on it, and he was terrified that my buying that land was going to mean his eviction, because that is how he fed his family, that is how he earned his living, that's how he stayed alive. The interesting thing is that from the moment I saw that old man, I saw myself, actually. And I think it was that sense of the two of us being so close to each other in our respective realities that led me to what seems like the huge impertinence of playing both roles in Valley Song.
He worries about nothing else, or he prays for nothing else. Come, Veronica, let us hold hands and pray for rain. Come, Veronica, let us hold hands and pray for no late frost. Come, Veronica, let us hold hands and pray that the bees don't sting the young pumpkins. Well, what about me? I am also a living thing, you know. I also want to grow.
This little triumvirate is a microcosm for the whole country and the rough road that lies ahead, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely, because there are a lot of South Africans, a lot of white South Africans who are trying to hold on, still trying to hold on to the past in a way that is no longer possible. And in doing that are blocking the futures of the young Veronicas. Oh yeah, what I realize now, of course, is Valley Song is a parable about the present-day South Africa.
Bucks is bound to the soil. He's an extension of the land.
He's an Afrikaner.
Right.
Like my mother.
And yet the new generation, they're not setting down these roots. And because of their impatience, a great deal of anger is going to grow within, I think.
Absolutely. That is a problem which politicians have already started to reckon with. And it is, I suppose, inevitable. But at the same time, it does present something of a challenge to the government of the future, because they are a significant group of people, and when the next elections come around in 2 years' time, they're going to be, they're already very angry because promises haven't been delivered, promises haven't been kept, and when the next election comes around, I think they're going to be very vociferous.
So, what are you waiting for, Private? Powerman Cook. Oh, no, Veronica. The other arm, please.
Sorry, Cobra. Your power was a soldier, but he didn't win the war. He had a gun and bullets, but he didn't know what for.
You talk a lot about singing in many of your plays, and a civilization without song is a desolate civilization. And we see the analogy in this particular play with Veronica, when you allude to the fact that without song, she'll wither.
If anything represents the soul in flight, if anything actually gives our spirit wings, I think it is when we raise our voice in praise, in song, whether we do it in church or in a concert hall, or just when you've got your sleeves rolled up and you're washing the dishes. The moment we turn our experience, turn ourselves into song, something extraordinary happens.
Veronica wants to sing for big audiences. Is that a metaphor for acceptance?
Oh yes, absolutely. Acceptance and also influence. I mean, to have your voice heard by a lot of people. You know, at the end of the play, right at the end of the play, in the last exchange between her and the ambiguous author presence figure that has been drifting in and out of the play, I say to her, when I try to persuade her tongue-in-cheek for the last time to forget her plans about leaving the village, and she says, no, I have got to go, I have got to go. And I say to her, you make it sound like an order. Go to Johannesburg, Veronica Jonkers, and sing. And she says, yes, that's right, that is what it feels like. And then I, as the author, say to her, I know. I wasn't laughing at you, I was laughing at myself. And that's the truth, actually. In Veronica, I have also restated the urgency the artist has to express himself that I felt at that age. Veronica is also actually something of an image of young Athol Fugard. As somebody who wanted to do something with his life. I didn't want to sing because I knew I didn't have a voice, even though I was a choir boy.
But you have sung.
But I knew that I wanted to, and it's exactly the same thing.
This search for acceptance, that's part of the insidious nature of slavery, isn't it? That here are these black South Africans searching for acceptance from white South Africans, and it's not to be granted in apartheid. And therein lies part of the degradation of the soul among black South
Absolutely,
Africans.
correct. Correct. I mean, that's when I think I used the word mutilation effect of apartheid earlier on. And that is what it has done to them, even as one of the mutilating effects in my own personal life, I know, is that those years of apartheid and scrutiny by the secret police and being hounded by the secret police have left me with a degree of paranoia in my nature and my makeup that I will never get rid of.
That's where
I'm always looking over my shoulder.
That's why you talk about 40 years is not erased overnight.
No, no.
Veronica's line, I've used up all my mischief, there's nothing left, is, I think, indicative of the fact that this young woman is going to spread her wings.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And, you know, she's also based on a real character. There was a real Veronica in the village. And as I got to know her and we became friends and she trusted me enough to talk about herself and her future and to bring me every new song that she made up, because she would turn anything that happened in her life into song. I finally awed by her sense that this little world was too small for her. That, you know, she had wings and was going to fly, and as you say, just had to leave.
If Alfred tries to save up for a new bicycle, he could spend his whole life waiting for it.
No, he won't. If he dreams properly, he will get it.
Okay, so then, how do you dream properly?
Oh,
Yeah.
you must see it. I believe it. Alfred must see that bicycle like he was watching it on TV. He must see himself sitting on it, riding around the village and ringing the bell and waving at everybody. Then, he must believe that is what is going to happen. He must believe that as hard as he can.
Also the image of Veronica on this little apple box, looking into this home, this white home, to see a bit of westernization, whether it be a television or whatever, and at the same time standing on this little apple box, singing for a coin.
I know.
She is essentially lifting her head up out of that valley, isn't she?
That's right. That's right. I mean, that's what dreaming is about, isn't it? And the important thing is, and I think this is what hopefully the play suggests as well, is that just idle dreaming is not enough. You've actually got to have the determination and the will to try and turn that dream into reality. I mean, she could go on dreaming in the valley for the rest of her life. What she really needed, and which she finally shows she has got, is the determination to get out of the valley, to save up enough money to buy a train ticket to go to Johannesburg.
And yet, where do we draw the line? This matriculation may not be a good thing, because if you take all the youth, all the exuberance out of a country, then it can fall right back to the predators.
Good. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe that's another play.
As a playwright, you've always had to walk this fine line between dramatic urgency and also the profound understanding of the toll that has been exacted by apartheid. How does one do that when you write a play?
It's not anything that I have a theory about. As I have lived my life in South Africa, I have obviously had my eyes and ears open as much as I could all the time. And from time to time, you just see something on the street, or you read about something in a newspaper, or something is told to you by a friend. And being the compulsive notebook keeper that I am, they go into my notebooks, and eventually some of them come back and say, this is the seminal image for a play. And all I can really do then is focus as passionately as I can on the human element in the story. Tell it as clearly, as simply, as truthfully as I can, and hope that in doing that, that political world that we are living in is somehow there's going to be a comment on that. I don't set out with a comment in my mind, if you know what I'm saying. I leave my story to do that. I try to tell the story. I'm a storyteller, first and foremost. Not a preacher, not a politician, a storyteller.
And yet the kernel changes sometimes, from the chamber drama in Master Harold and the Boys to the mysticism of Road to Mecca.
Oh yes, oh yes. I mean that is what is so exciting about a writer's life, is that you're setting out on a different voyage of discovery every time. I mean, I mentioned earlier today to some friends that I have a new play on my desk, even as I'm in performance with Valley Song, and I'm going to be doing that in South Africa in a few months' time. And that involved, again, totally different to Valley Song. Another huge journey, voyage of discovery for me. It was wonderful. Keeps me young.
We hope you enjoyed meeting Athol Fugard. What an incredible playwright he is. And now, all across the nation, local and regional theaters are celebrating the 100th anniversary of George and Ira Gershwin. The Gershwin Centennial officially recognizes and approves productions which celebrate the musical contributions of these two icons. The first officially sanctioned production of Crazy for You here on the East Coast was at the Little Theater of Alexandria. We thought we'd close the show this week with a few minutes of that production. Until next time, remember, art was meant to be appreciated, so you be a part of it.
And welcome to Zangler Theatre. This is the final performance of the season, but I hope you'll be back in 8 weeks for a wonderful new show. Thank you, S. God bless.